Welcome to the afternoon session. My name is Guy Bartram. I'm based in the UK. I work for VMware. I run product marketing for our cloud providers, all 4,500 of them. So no small business and a very fast-growing business. And sovereign cloud is really critical to our business going forwards, particularly in the EU and countries where regulation is becoming more important. Okay, so really introducing you now to our esteemed Chief Technologist, Martin Hoskins, who's going to lead the first panel discussing sovereign designs, implementations, and processes with our cloud provider partners. Over to you, Martin.
Thanks very much, Guy. And yes, and thank you all for coming to Brussels for this event. It's fantastic. Really great morning. And this morning we heard from two VMware strategic partners, Telecom Italia and OVH. And on the stage now we have 5 other strategic partners that we're going to hear from about their views of digital sovereignty and sovereign cloud, etc. So we're just going to introduce you guys quickly, just a minute or so about yourself and your role. Maybe we start at the far end there with Miguel.
Okay, hi. My name is Miguel Gomez. I work for Telefonica Cybersecurity and Cloud Tech, and I am Technical Product Manager for Virtual Data Center, which is our public cloud based on VMware technology.
Hi, I'm Darren Adcock. I work for Redcentric, based in the UK. I'm a Product Manager responsible for our sovereign cloud services.
Okay, my name is Larik Verschuren. I'm the CTO of Fundaments, Dutch company providing data center as a service.
Hi, my name is Nassima Auvray. I'm Chief Trust Officer at Orange Business and based in Paris.
So I'm Alex Wallner. I'm the CEO of Plusserver. Plusserver is one of the biggest German cloud providers.
Okay, so this morning we heard some really differing opinions actually from different policymakers and cloud providers. But what I'm interested to find out now is what sovereignty or cloud sovereignty means to you guys, and how that is in the context of the services you deliver, and how does that differ from the services you were delivering previously and before they were sovereign. So maybe we'll start this side with Alex first of all, and if you can give me your views on what it means to you and how it's different from what you were doing previously.
Yeah. So first of all, for us, it was super important to kind of declutter the definition of sovereignty, because in the past, when you asked 10 people, you got 12 different opinions on what sovereignty really means. And I think you need a different level of sovereignty depending on which vertical you approach, which workloads you approach, and so on. So we created kind of an onion model, which has as a basis the GDPR, then moving up to what we call data sovereignty, so the flexibility of customers to move data around, not using proprietary solutions. Then we have the level of legislation, which is in a lot of European countries, such as Germany, a big topic. We have operational sovereignty, which means that we operate completely transparent for the customer and for the community in the way we operate our data centers. And then we have as the highest level the technology sovereignty, which means that we also buy into open source kind of architectures. And now there's no right or wrong, but there is different needs for different levels of sovereignty depending on the workloads, and it's reflected in our offering, obviously.
Okay, cool. Nassima.
Yes. As we see, it's very important to explain what digital sovereignty implies. And generally speaking, we prefer to address the topic through the digital trust lens. Why? For several reasons. The first one, sovereignty, without dealing with digital sovereignty. Sovereignty is an attribute of states. It doesn't mean that a company like Orange is not involved in sovereignty, but it is factual. This is the first point. The second one is that our customers, clients, who we are working, are expecting trusted solutions, which implies to have solutions that are compliant with several attributes and criteria. There are 4 of them. The first one is the security, or the ability to have confidentiality on data. The second one is the resilience, in order to be able to provide services whatever the crisis. The third one is linked to the regulation, and we can see that we know, of course, the most famous GDPR, but there are a lot of other regulations, and sometimes specific ones linked to specific areas. And another one which is important is the ability to help them to navigate into the risk management linked to technology dependencies. So, of course, there are other criteria, but clearly it is important to see that behind sovereignty, there are some concrete attributes.
Yeah, absolutely. About
with Fundaments, we look actually with our data centers as a service offering, we look at 3 pillars: technology, people, and process. Technology is of where is your data, where is it residing, what kind of ingredients do you have within your data center. And you asked also what changed from the cloud service we had to a sovereign cloud play. If you look, from traditionally we had a product play, so the technology was already, it didn't change along the way. It changed the way how we interact with our customers on the people and the process part. So telling them what people are working with Fundaments, what processes do we have in play, and introducing these kind of knowledge to the customer, you can have a discussion about protecting the data, the crown jewels of the customer in our data center. And I really liked the analogy about the kitchen we heard before, and when I take that to our play, you could say we opened up our kitchen. If you have a restaurant with a kitchen within, you know who's working there, what ingredients are in there, and in that way we provided transparency. That's what actually, if you ask me what sovereignty is also about transparency, about data governance.
I agree. Darren, how about Redcentric?
Well, picking up on the previous points around trust and people, process and technology, we're fortunate enough in the UK to have some guiding principles from the National Cybersecurity Centre. So for some time they've had these 14 cloud security principles that we're able to follow. So from a technology and process perspective, we're quite well covered as long as we actually follow those principles. So it's actually a core part of everything that we do. We do go a stage further than that as well with our people in terms of clearances. So to provide trust to our government customers, we have people who are cleared by either the police force, the Home Office, or even at the very, very basic level, just basic personnel screening, which is kind of a standard that generally applies. So that's kind of trust is the key part, and then how we actually provide that trust.
Okay. Yeah. And Miguel, for Telefonica.
Well, for us, sovereignty is the ability to assure of our customers that their data will not be subject to third-party jurisdictions. And to do that, as has been mentioned before, we need to take a look at different aspects. Some of them come naturally to us, and they do not make any difference to our standard offerings because, for example, in terms of corporate structure, we're a Spanish company, Spanish operated, so we don't have to do anything specific to cover that, whereas other providers need to create specific legal entities to provide that. So in that part, there is no difference. But of course, there are other aspects that need to be taken into account. So for example, as discussed before, the technical part or the platform part. So in our sovereign cloud offering, for sure, we need to make sure that we are not using SaaS services or external services, not only on the tenant's domain, but particularly on our management domain in our own OSS and BSS. And also from the operations perspective, we need to make sure that the platform is operated locally with Spanish personnel, and we avoid for that, for example, some follow-the-sun approaches that we do apply in other services.
Okay, that's great. So I'm going to move on now to think about sovereignty in the context of our hyperscaler partners. And of course, VMware kind of sits in the middle here. We partner with all the major hyperscalers. We have, as Guy mentioned, 4,500 independent cloud providers globally as well. So we're trying to sit in the middle here. But how do you see this market changing? We've seen announcements, and I'm going to name them. They weren't named earlier. The Google and Oracle in the last couple of weeks, announced sovereign services. How do you think that's going to change the identity of sovereignty over time, and do you think it's going to make a lot of difference? And how do you then intend to differentiate? And maybe we'll start with Alex again.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's a great question and probably worth a 3-hour discussion. I think the ultimate discussion is always how important is legislation for the potential customer you operate with. And I think Google, even with working together with local partners, Microsoft doing the same, AWS doing the same, and Oracle trying kind of the same. The legislation will always be clear that it is basically a US-based company. And there's a ton of customers who say, I could not care less. For me, GDPR is good enough, that's fine. Also maybe a region in Germany, in France is good enough for me, all good. But if you see very restricted verticals in Germany, for example, like the public sector, like healthcare, like also to a certain extent finance, bank, insurance, for them it matters a lot where the legislation comes from with the company they work for and work together with. And I don't believe this will fundamentally and legally change in the next couple of years. I think it means for the local cloud providers, such as us in Germany, that we have to kind of mimic the services that are meaningful to our customers, that we have to operate in the speed of a hyperscaler, and that we have to innovate, because obviously with not using hyperscalers, there's a gap created in the market that we need to fill.
Yeah, agree. Nassima.
I would say that the first differentiator from Orange is that we are a multi-cloud orchestrator. We are moving with two legs. One leg with our own infrastructures and cloud. I will come back on this point. And the other leg is the managed services we provide on top some other cloud providers. So this is the first one, and it's important because we clearly see that a lot of customers and more are looking for multi-cloud solutions, because there is not a single one, because as we all said that there are different usage of cloud, different data applications and level of sensitivity. This is the first point. The second one, as a European cloud operator, we have our own infrastructures in Orange data centers. For example, we have a cloud solution, Cloud Avenue, which is hosted in France, which is resilient, secured by Orange Cyber Defense, which is operated and fully managed by Orange people. We have other local cloud solutions, for example, in the Norways, and it is also a differentiator. So what I want to say is that no single solution, but a gradient of cloud usage, and every time we have to see what are the criteria, the use we want to do, and there is also the question of transparency. To be sure that the customers clearly understand where and how their data are managed from a technical point of view, but also from a regulatory point of view.
Cool, thank you. And
yeah, I think it all comes down to the definition of sovereignty. I can imagine that in the coming time we will have graduations or varieties of sovereignty with classifications in that. I think in the end, it comes to the question that you have to ask about data governance and what you can provide there. If you look at the hyperscalers, you cannot ignore them. We are in a multi-cloud world. You need the best of all brands, to say it like that. But in the end, you still have to look in a way that cloud is not a solution on itself. You have to acknowledge that the data that you're bringing to a cloud, that's where the value is. So you really have to think from a data perspective to the tools that you use, the clouds that you use. And with that comes graduate versions of sovereignty. So it's all about definition.
Yeah, absolutely. As Laurent started the day off with, we don't have a clear definition. And if you look up the word in the English dictionary, then it means something very specific. And I'm not sure which dictionary Google are using, and Oracle, but it's not the English Cambridge dictionary, I can assure you. Darren.
Interestingly enough, I think trust is the key differentiator for us. Coming back to the hyperscalers, do they guarantee that nobody in country is touching the data or touching the systems that contain the data? And the answer is no. Particularly some of their platforms of service rather than infrastructure as a service offerings, they're open to anybody. They could be administered by anybody in the world. So, are you absolutely certain? we deal with that by making sure it's segregated responsibility. We have a separate network. Only the people with security clearances can get onto that network. So we're building that trust all the way through. But when it comes to actually working with the hyperscalers, what we've done is actually extended some of that process and control. So it's still people with the clearances are the only ones allowed to touch those VPCs, that domain. But we've added things like the privileged session management. So they can only get access to what they're allowed to access. Things like policies that make sure that resources can only be stood up in the right place. Now, those policies can be changed, so that doesn't mean it's bulletproof. But then what we also have with privileged session management is recording. So we can replay what anybody does. So there's a level of trust, but also a level of audit that essentially keeps people honest. So administrators really, if they do make a mistake, they make a genuine mistake, we can find it and we can remediate it. If they do something deliberately, they know we're going to find it. So it enforces the trust.
Yeah.
They've already been cleared, but we all know that generally people are the biggest weakness.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree. Miguel?
Well, I would like to start by saying that we are Amazon, also Google and Microsoft partners, and that we also offer those services to our customers. But of course, not all sovereign clouds are created equal, and as we have discussed before, the sovereignty term is a bit blurry. So what we have is a chart to help our customers and also our sales force to choose, depending on the data categories that they want to host, the appropriate solution for that. That requires, of course, the customer to have the data classified. That for public entities is simpler because the data categories are established by the Spanish law at least, but for private customers, that's another story that we can discuss later if you want to. Concerning the differentiation, I would say that there are different areas where we do differentiate. The first one is, of course, the footprint and the local presence. The capillarity that we have in terms of points of presence in our footprint is unmatched. The second factor for differentiation, I would say, are the professional and managed services. We are not only a cloud organization, but also a cybersecurity organization. So we can offer those services to our customers and help them on their digital transformation journey, which is something they normally appreciate. And thirdly, I would say customization. We do not believe in this idea that one size fits all. And particularly in military and defense, these customers have very specific security requirements, and sometimes they need to combine logical security measures with physical security measures. They have very specific requirements on the facilities, etc. So our ability to discuss with our customers and build something that really fits their needs, rather than making them adapt their services to our architecture, is something that our customers really value.
Cool. And that actually brings me on really nicely to the next question about customers. What are they asking for, and how you think that's going to evolve over time? Because IaaS is IaaS, but customers are evolving. They want more PaaS services, container services, ML services, advanced storage services. So if we could think about that from a customer perspective, what are they asking you now, and what do you think they're going to be asking you for in 5 years' time? We'll start here again with Alex.
Yeah, I think most of our customers do not ask for a cloud. What they basically ask for is IT modernization. And this is where a lot of people get stuck. This is also where a lot of people get stuck in dealing with the US hyperscalers, because they usually throw a technology stack in front of the feet of the customer and say, good luck with it, this is awesome technology. But for most of our customers, this is not good enough. They are on a transformational journey. They are on an IT modernization journey, which means a lot of applications they have today are not cloud ready, need to be brought on a cloud journey. They still deal with a lot of legacy that will never be cloud ready, not in 100 years. So IT modernization is what they ultimately ask for. And this basically includes a lot of components such as containerization, such as security, such as hyperscaler kind of services and the adoption of those. But in the end, I think it is always important that we also recognize today's reality. And this is also why the partnership with VMware is so important for us. Today's reality with a lot of customers is VMware, and they need solutions for that. Very often they simply want to lift and shift. They want to get the workloads from A to B into a cloud and not burn any resources in operations anymore. So the reality very often is not as exciting as the white papers are.
Yeah. No, I agree 100%. Nassima, from your view.
Yeah, I totally agree with what has been said. When we deal with sovereign cloud, we don't have to forget that the first goal of cloud is provide innovation, first of all. So, and we clearly see that with all these questions of sovereignty and so on, sometimes we are losing the first goal. And we clearly see that even customers are lost because they don't know what they want. So they need to be helped. And as you said, cloud is not plug and play. It is a journey. Many customers have on-premise solutions with a huge legacy, and they need help step by step to first have a kind of lift and shift, but also to identify which are their priorities in terms of usage and in terms of level of criticality of data. So clearly, this is the first step, and they need to be helped also to navigate in the more and more complex regulatory landscape.
Yeah. Awesome. Yeah. No, I agree 100%.
Yeah.
What's you, Larik?
Yeah, customers come in a lot of flavors. If you look at that, I agree with what I've heard. Yeah. You see that main drivers. If you look at the customer that are not really thinking about data governance, the drivers are always cost. We want to go from a CapEx to OpEx because cloud facilitate that for us. So somewhere from that question to data governance, there's a long journey to go. And I think we as cloud providers also have a responsibility on that, to ask the right questions back in the end, to also to show the services that we have. In the end, the transition to that, it's a journey, as you said. The taking the customer, not just saying we are going to the cloud. No, we are going to protect and make your data available, and that's that's the play that we need to do. And I really like the fact that VMware has provided the framework to address specific topics on that, on data classification, residency, everything, the legislation that's coming around it. And that helps in the discussion. So from the customer asking now, give me an efficient IT where I don't spend a lot, to maybe a clear discussion on data governance. I hope really that we will work on that in the coming time.
Yes, I hope so as well. Darren, what are you seeing from your customers?
Well, certainly right now, IT modernisation is still very high, public sector particularly. I think budgets have been squeezed for a period of time, which meant probably a lot of projects to modernise have actually been deferred and put back. So right now, it's definitely that. One of the trends I'm seeing is sustainability and also social responsibility. So sustainability is not going away. We all know that. There's going to be a continuing focus on trying to save the planet. And clearly that's front and centre of everybody. And we're seeing these things now on a lot of the government frameworks that the public sector procures through. So now, although there's lots of them, the sustainability and social responsibility is more and more prevalent. On social responsibility, I think that's a really interesting point when it comes to the use of AI. There needs to be some social responsibility specifically at how AI is used. There seems to be some movement in that direction that actually has been publicised only this week, which is good. I think we'll probably be asked to make sure we're building that in, or capable of building that in. So I think that's probably where we're going to see the future push. And the other one, service catalogues. People want cloud to be easy to use. It's, as you say, to innovate. Innovate, move at speed. So a service catalogue that can actually give them easy access to those applications, whether open source based or proprietary, is what they want. They want velocity. They want to be able to go, all right, I've got the go ahead to spend the money. Let's start driving value and seeing the outcome I'm looking for as soon as possible. And automation and service catalogue is key.
Yeah, maybe. Miguel.
Well, all of the aspects that have been discussed before definitely ring a bell, but if I had to name the number one demand for sovereign cloud customers, I would say it's guidance. Because we have to bear in mind that many of these customers are first-time cloud customers. So in the generalistic cloud offering, customers are very savvy, they are embracing multi-cloud, and they are very advanced. But these customers have a deep, sound technical knowledge, but many of them, up to now, were doing everything on-prem with their own IT systems because they had evaluated cloud. And since it didn't meet the sovereignty requirements, they could not afford moving to it. So they are now moving to the cloud for the first time, and what they demand basically is guidance. They're doing it for the first time. And it's a very, let's say, enriching relationship because they have a deep technical knowledge in, for example, security and other aspects where we can learn a lot from them. And they, of course, learn a lot from us on cloud and how they can transform and modernize their services and applications.
Okay, cool. And a couple of you have spoken about public sector, and that really is going to bring me on to my next question about, how are you helping public sector organizations transform? In my experience, this is hugely challenging. The amount of legacy systems in the public sector is hugely challenging. I think that's probably true across Europe, not just in the UK. But how are you helping those transform? And what are the, can you give me some examples as well where you've helped public sector organizations do digital transformation effectively on your platform, Alex?
It's probably, again, an answer that takes 3 hours. Yeah. I will try it in 2. There's different answers. I think one aspect is technology. In Germany, I don't know how it is in other European countries. In Germany, public sector customers pivot a lot in the direction of open source, but do not really know what to do with it. So they need and they want an open standard. They have a today's reality, which is VMware, which is in still increasing installed base. But they also need to test the water with open source. And I think we need to create environments where customers can really do that in a controlled way based on open standards, that they do not run into any vendor lock-ins, and also have an openness for a future multi-cloud strategy if the world would open up in public sector for US hyperscalers. The other big portion is obviously leaning into the modernization challenge and helping them with their applications who are partially 20 years old, and really transforming them together with partners and partner ecosystems into new architectures and new application environments that help. The last thing is really to enable customers to use the cloud in the way they want it. So we have classic public cloud offerings, we have private cloud offerings, but we can also bring in kind of a defined stack the cloud to the customer, which also very often is a good answer for the public sector, because in very regulated environments, sometimes data is not even allowed to leave the data center or to leave the premise of the customer. So there's a couple of answers how we can help, and this is probably just a small portion of it, but the public sector needs a lot of help, which could be a good business for all of us.
Yeah, agree. Nassima, your views?
Yes, I will give you the example of France, where the French government is very pushy. There is a French doctrine on cloud, the doctrine Cloud au Centre, which explain what are the attributes of cloud, why cloud is a way to innovate, but also what are the key attributes in order to move into a trusted cloud. I insist on that because they do not mention sovereign cloud, but trusted cloud. So for Orange Business, there are several things. So as I said previously, we see that many public sector organizations have a huge legacy on their own data centers, and there is, I would say, a kind of paradigm change concerning CapEx versus OpEx. It means that they need to understand what is the added value of cloud regarding the costs and the revenues with what they are using today. This is the first point. The second one, I mentioned the doctrine Cloud au Centre. We decided to enter into the Secnum Cloud qualification for our Cloud Avenue offer because we clearly see that it is a way to provide some guidance on the attributes around trusted cloud. And the third one, I would say that public sector need to be helped to identify what is its IT patrimony, to understand what kind of data and application they have and how they can move them into one or several cloud solutions. So, as we said, we explain that cloud is like a journey, and to do so, we use some use cases in order to show how it can be concrete.
Great, thank you.
Yeah, the journey, I recognize that one. And the challenging is in the Netherlands, if you talk to public sector, in the end, if it comes to a use case, it's always a tender. And you would like to have the discussion around the solution that you provide, and in the way that you put in a tender, you don't have a discussion. Yeah. It's just a one way of putting a solution. So that's challenging in a way. If I look at for example, we have an offering, we have a product for public sector where we connect all kind of public service together, from local municipality, health service, where they can communicate. But there's also, for example, military police included. And we have regulations that should comply in the discussion about data governance. And so you need to put that in your solution. But in this case, we already won the tender, and then the discussion only starts. And then you can really do the tailor-made solution on cloud sovereignty, and then have the discussion there. In the end, it resulted also that the people that were working on this project were screened from A to Z, their background, and then you can take, cloud sovereignty to a next level. But it's quite hard to do it in the first phase.
Yeah, you've got to incrementally increase those security clearances and the governance controls, etc.
I think the whole definition for government, to get the governments, for example, what we have in the Netherlands, the compliance checks that we already have, to take it also in a data sovereign framework. So I was happy to hear that the EU is also looking at that, and it will also go to the Netherlands in the end.
Cool. Darren, from Redcentric's point of view.
I guess in probably two key areas, there's a kind of technology challenge, which is really portability. They really want to be able to move data from A to B to C with very little disruption. Sometimes that's for commercial reasons. If I can develop on a hyperscale cloud at low cost and then move it into a sovereign cloud because the true data set is sensitive, then actually I want to do that seamlessly. So contained is obviously a key way of dealing with that. So we're seeing that demand right now. Moving on to the other one, which is commercial. Probably two strands to that. One is, back to your data classification point, we have multiple kind of severity levels of classification. Because we take we're in this kind of mid to top range in terms of our design, it means we can actually give some of those controls that people with a lower actual hard need maybe can't quite justify themselves, but because the investment's already been made by Redcentric, we can actually make that available to them at a much lower cost. So the chief information security officers are happy because they can get what they want at about much better cost. And the other thing is what I'm going to call nationalisation. So actually moving to national systems rather than each local authority or individual authority having their own version. Then let's kind of bring it all together. A great example is a service we run for the police, which is a national automatic number plate recognition service. So there are 43 different law enforcement agencies in the UK, each of whom had their own systems. Right? So a huge amount of cost, a huge amount of waste. Now, all of that data is into one single data set, which means in the future, we've now got this huge data lake that we can then start to exploit more. So the data's there, what else can we drive from it? What other insights can we get? How do we actually improve public services, but improve public services at a really good cost point?
Cool. Miguel, from Telefonica.
Well, as the Secretary of State mentioned this morning, Spain has a national strategy, a national plan of transitioning the public administration to the cloud. And Telefonica is being a key partner in that transformation. And we're also helping some military and defense bodies in Spain on that digital transformation. I cannot cite specific examples, but for example, I can tell you that we have some very exciting projects in military and defense of organizations that up to now could not use cloud, and they had evaluated hyperscalers and discarded them. And now they are working with us, and they're using our services. And we also see good opportunities in private entities that are working with those public bodies, because they need to comply with some regulations and certifications that are very difficult to meet when they work on their own. But if they work with us in our platform, the same one that the public body they're working with is using, everything is much simpler. So I agree with the idea that this modernization of the public administration is going to be a great opportunity for European cloud operators.
Yeah, I actually have some questions on regulations, but before I ask any more questions, I'm going to come to the audience to ask questions. So if you have a question for any of these guys, or a generic question for me or these guys, if you could, you got one. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Georgia Skuma from Deloitte, and thank you so much all the panelists for the so nice insights. My question is the following. We're advising a lot of clients, big organizations, including EU institutions, and smaller companies in this transformation journey and cloud journey. And what I missed from the parameters you mentioned regarding the demand of clients, I didn't hear a lot about tailored services. I don't mean tailored services in the terms of having a portfolio of services or a services catalog, as you said, but more tailored terms of services, terms and conditions. One of the points where we see a lot of resistance from hyperscalers is that the contract is there, we take it as a given. It is either a yes or a no. I have questions from all my clients. How can we do? How can we move in terms of contractual, I would say, negotiations, or how we can improve a preset balance that is already set forth in contracts or in the arrangements with the clients? And I don't see, is it different now, the situation with all the providers here, or the, Telefonica, Orange, or Oracle? I mean, what is the margin of making the terms more balanced, basically? Your take on that?
Who would like to take that?
Yeah. Well, if I look at for us as Fundaments, I think that's where our USP is. For us, the offering that we have is like 80% standardized, but the tailor-made service that the customer is demanding is the sweet spot. And that's also how we differentiate from the hyperscalers. So I think it's in every bigger opportunity we have, there's like at least 20% tailor-made specific work there. So I think from a data sovereignty perspective, that's also another USP to add to that. But customers normally already have specific connectivity demands or all kind of procedures that they want to comply to. So I think for us as cloud service providers, that's where the chance is if you look at the hyperscalers there.
Yeah, the hyperscaler model is, come and consume. And they have a very highly standardized proprietary delivery model, which is the same for everyone, no matter you're a small enterprise, a small business, or you're a big multinational company. The service level is pretty much the same. And this is, again, where VMware cloud providers in general, but obviously we're talking specifically about sovereign cloud today, are able to differentiate, is deliver services that meet the needs of customers from an operational perspective. Was there another point? Yeah, Miguel, did you have a... Oh, sorry, Miguel.
Yeah, well, if you recall when I answered Martin's question on differentiation, I mentioned that customization is one of these key aspects. Since I have a technical role, I focused on the technical part, because it's true that many of these customers require technical customizations. But as you mentioned, they also require, in many cases, customizations in other areas. For example, in operations. some customers demand a dedicated operations team and the members of that operations team to have a specific security clearance, and that may have impact on their SLAs or on their response times. Other customers, in order to meet with some internal or external regulations, they want to have access to some data about our platform or some logs, etc. So that's not something we do for, of course, for every customer, but for important projects, these are things that we have done. And I think that's going to be the way forward with this kind of projects, because sovereign cloud customers, particularly those coming from some sectors like military or defense, they have very specific requirements, and they have to be met at all levels, not only technical level, but as you mentioned, in terms of service, operation, etc. So it's a very valid point.
Yeah. Darren, sorry,
Yeah.
we'll come to Darren and then we'll come to you.
Yeah, I'd like to add, like I mentioned earlier, there's a number of government frameworks that the UK public sector procure from. And actually the reverse is true. So actually the underlying framework terms and conditions are already in place. So as a service provider, we actually have to sign up to theirs, not the reverse. Now obviously they're quite generic. They're covering the underlying parts of the contract. So, you know, it's not going to cover every technicality, every particular feature that we're offering or every little service offering that's out there. But underlying, there's a kind of very fair and very balanced set of terms and conditions already in place. I mean, the interesting thing there is we talked earlier about the you know, where's the EU going with legislation? Maybe there's a model there that can be adopted.
Yeah, yeah. So, Nassima.
Yeah, thank you for the question, because we focused a lot on technological and regulatory attributes, but clearly when I mentioned a multi-cloud orchestrator, we see that our customers are also happy to see that we can adapt to their needs and be able to provide tailored solutions. And of course, it means that in the contract, we are able to be agile in order to answer to their expectations.
Yeah. Alex, you're the only one who hasn't contributed here. Anything you want to add?
Yeah, I think we just need to differentiate what industry we talk about. I think it's when you don't talk about regulated parts of the economy, such as public services or healthcare, then it's down to the customer to accept the terms and conditions of a hyperscaler or not. It's as easy as that. I think with the public sector, it's exactly like you said. They have very clear frameworks, what they expect from a contractual perspective, and you comply to them or not. That is for sure something where local providers can be much more flexible than a US hyperscaler, but in the end, in regulated markets, the customers very much direct what they expect in a contract.
Yeah, I agree. Any other questions? Yes, so this side. Wait for the mic, if you could, for the people online, so they can sorry.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. My name is Rim. I'm Proximus. I'm actually a privacy expert, so on the technology side, it's not very my expertise. But my question is, how do you see the role of European providers? So my question is really, I think that at some point we realized that in Europe we were pretty dependent on US providers, and that gave them a lot of power. And referring to the previous question, in terms of terms and conditions, negotiation of the contracts, sometimes feels that also as European providers, we take more responsibility in terms of our own customers than the hyperscalers are ready to take. We have now the European data strategy, and that will attack that dominant position, like with the DSA, DMA, Data Act, etc. So what would be the role of European providers? Do you see them as replacing hyperscalers? Because that doesn't really seem to be in the DNA of European companies. Do you see them working hand in hand together? Because you know that everyone has their own agenda, and some people would like to see European hyperscalers, but we all know that we don't really see that happening. We have hyperscalers offering new technologies to answer these sovereignty requests, such as confidential compute, disconnected cloud, etc. But again, if the US wants to access that data, because here again we're talking about foreign access, they will access that data. If they want to force Microsoft to not offer confidential compute anymore, they will be successful in that. So I'm thinking long-term, sustainable. What would be the sustainable path for you? Would it be to create a sort of mix of fully European companies that can replace that offer on the market, or do you see more collaboration globally to reach that sovereignty?
Really good question.
Yes.
Who would like to start us off?
I can. I think a good question. Thank you. I think replacing is too big to say it like that. I think it will be a mix of both. You see, multi-cloud is the strategy if it comes from IT perspective. So I think the European cloud providers will have an answer to the hyperscalers. And I hope with all the Data Act-like regulations that we would have a framework on how to handle data. And depending on the type of data, it would either go to a European cloud service provider, or if it's general, it could go to an hyperscaler. So replacing is not, it's too big, but I think it will be an answer to offload specific data to European clouds.
I agree. I think, to some extent, the commodity services that are offered by AWS, Google, and the others, they're effectively an API layer. And you can consume those APIs for particular services, storage, maybe ML, whatever it might be, cognitive services. But it doesn't mean you have to commit into those public clouds, your full application stack and your data. Anyone else want to comment on this? Very, we don't know exactly how this is going to play out, but
yes, I can. Very interesting question. Not easy. So I would say that we live in an interconnected world with dependencies worldwide. If I take the example of Orange, we have a footprint all over the world with our network. So we have a global approach, but also a local one, because our customers are very happy to see that Orange is able to be closer to them everywhere locally. So we have partnerships with many technological companies all over the world, and we don't consider that bringing fences all around Europe will be the solution. There are several solutions. The goal is to find the best balance between innovation, trust, between the regulation and the technologies and the innovation we are looking for. So we see that at European level there is a big push around this topic of data protection, privacy, and so on, which is very, it's good news. And so that's all. I think that there is no single answer, and considering its Orange approach, because it is because we have a worldwide footprint, but considering that we could do everything at European level, we are not sure that this is the solution.
No, I agree with every single word there, Nassima. I think that balanced approach between the integration, the technologies that you want to consume to innovate and also meet the regulatory requirements. It's that balancing across those. Is there any... Sorry, Darren.
Yeah, I've got something interesting. I think the large amount of that is going to be driven by the citizens. There's some recent research in the UK regarding NHS data, so national health data, and the use of AI. And to be honest, there's a trust issue there. Who's allowed to actually generate it? In fact, at the moment, there are still actually trust issues with the use of AI. But to be honest, the piece that hasn't yet come through with the general public is not just how it's being used and the conclusion it's being made, but who's got access to it. So I think the citizens will lead it. I think the privacy will ultimately be driven by legislation, which will obviously be driven by the citizens of the countries.
Maybe because you said you're not a technology expert, let me answer with a technology aspect. I think a lot of discussion around sovereign partners versus hyperscaler partners goes down the legislation path. I believe we all agree that multi-cloud is the future, that there will be a mix out of hyperscaler services and local services, but I think it is important that we have a clear push in the direction of the hyperscalers, that they stop more and more using proprietary versions and that they open up and do not lock the data. Because in the end, part of sovereignty, we talked about it, is also that you can move data around. That's the charming aspect of a multi-cloud, that you can use several clouds based on their strength and how you require it. But if they freaking lock their data, then it is a mess. And I believe there, from my perspective, Europe could take a stronger stance in enforcing them, that they open up and build on open standards, because otherwise multi-cloud will always be to a certain extent an illusion.
Yeah. It will be interesting to see the response on the EU Cloud Data Act from the hyperscalers. We haven't really seen any response yet, but I think, obviously once that legislation is passed, we will start to see some responses and how they're going to address those challenges, which are going to be challenges for them. So. Any other questions? Over here, this lady over here.
Hello, everybody. I completely understood.
Sorry, could you introduce yourself and who you work for, just for the people
okay. I'm Soumya from VMware. I want to understand that, we understood that there is a lot that goes in the mix, right? But we also understand that there are several challenges while delivering sovereign cloud solutions. And the challenges could be multifold. And we heard about taking care of cost, varying regulations, and also taking care of the digital transformation efforts for various companies, right? And as an end goal, we want to deliver trusted solutions. But what do you think is the top one directive that we need to drive towards so that we deliver the utmost value for any company out there?
Would like to take that first. We've talked about the balance of innovation and interconnected world and multi-cloud and finding the right path for every organization. And every organization is going to be slightly different here. They're going to have different requirements. We've talked quite a bit about heavily regulated, like law enforcement and military as well. But not everyone sits in those categories. So again, it's the right solution that finds the right line to move across the different elements of what we've talked about multi-cloud, about the hyperscaler cloud, private cloud, effectively hosted private cloud, and hosted sovereign cloud.
Yeah, I've got something.
Go on, Darren.
Probably back to the citizens will drive it point, actually. I think the most important thing that citizens are looking for is control of their data. How that's achieved, who knows? But I think that's going to be the ultimate driver. Who gets to see it and when and why.
But do you think the average citizen understands that whilst they're browsing Facebook?
Facebook maybe not, but I think when it comes to health data, financial data, yes.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a very good point. I think social media and how that's used, it's a tricky place because people don't think of it in terms of what they're giving away.
Yeah.
But they do when it comes to financial data and health data.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe to add to that, control but also classification. To be as a citizen that you know what kind of data and what kind of classification is there. Then we all have health guidelines when you go to the supermarket where you have healthy food or not. In the Netherlands we have these A, B, C labels now. Maybe you can do something with data as well to maybe provide some guidelines or frameworks.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's one directive is quite hard, I believe.
Yeah. Sorry.
For me, the key word is responsibility. I think the reality is that every cloud provider carries the crown jewels of his customer, which is the data. And I think a lot of cloud providers still see themselves as technology companies, which is not true anymore. We are responsible for the data of our customers, and that could have a legislation aspect, availability aspect, a performance aspect, ethical aspect. But I think understanding that responsibility is key.
Any other comment, Nassima, Miguel?
Well, I think you raised a very good point, Martin, in terms of educating customers, because we are all hoping for new European regulations that will clarify the markets and will help customers decide which solutions are appropriate, because they will have those certifications. But until the time comes, data classification and choosing the right solution for your data is mandatory. And in some sectors, as I mentioned before, since this is heavily regulated, this is something natural, and the customers have all the information they require to classify their data and choose. But in the private sector and in certain industry verticals, customers need help to achieve that data classification and in choosing the right solution. And as you mentioned before, there is a lot of marketing at the moment, and people market solutions, and one would think that they fit every need. But I think it's very important to educate customers on that, so that they can make the right decision.
I agree, yeah. I call it cloud propaganda.
It is cloud propaganda.
Yeah, just marketing. We do have time for just one more question. Right over in the corner, as far as I can see over there, the gentleman. Right over in the fourth row corner. Oh. Okay. Welcome to my world.
Yes, Alain Gerrits, still working for Comdivision since this morning, my question. I was wondering, we heard a lot about data governance, control of the data, all extremely important, but I was wondering about your experience. People in government healthcare that use hyperscalers now, do they just ignore what could happen if the FBI says, give me your data?
Yeah.
Or do they rely on encryption?
Yeah.
And is encryption the way forward? But in that case, there are a lot of European governments, notably yours, the UK, who are adamant that they want, you can encrypt your data, but we want the key, because we always have to look if you're not doing naughty things on wherever on Facebook or what.
Yeah.
What is your experience there?
Yeah, so this is really the Cloud Act, your US 2018 Cloud Act. If we could just have maybe a minute from each of you. Who wants to go first?
I can start.
Miguel?
Yeah. So I think in sovereign cloud, encryption is mandatory. So I mean, it's something customers take for granted and needs to be provided. What you mentioned is something that hyperscalers do a lot, and we can call it mitigations. So they say, okay, to turn my service into sovereign, you can use these additional services. So you can encrypt, you can use an external KMS, you can use confidential computing, etc., etc. So that even if I am bound to a third-party jurisdiction and I have to deliver your data, I will deliver it encrypted since I don't hold the key. So it would be protected. So I think when customers are presented these options, they should consider two aspects. First, if so many mitigations are required, maybe this is not a natural platform or a valid solution for your data, because if it were a natural fit, why would so many countermeasures be required? And second, and I don't want to sound too paranoid here, but we have to bear in mind the kind of third-party entities that might gain access to that data. So if we're talking about the CIA or the NSS, your encryption may be really good if you want to keep your data safe from those entities.
Yeah. Cool. Darren?
Yeah, I'm concerned about encryption, if I'm honest, which probably drives again to keeping it in Europe. Quantum computing, they're predicting is going to be able to crack encryption algorithms so much faster than ever before. So if your data's in the US, who's going to be investing in? Who's going to be investing in it? You know, there's no doubt that CIA have the budget.
Yeah.
They will be spending the money, and if they want to crack it, they'll crack it unless we get new paradigms of encryption.
Yeah, I agree. It's an interesting space. Larik?
Well, the question about how government is looking, or local governments is using public hyperscalers there. In the Netherlands, we have these guidelines that you have to comply to use Azure, for example. So I think they use that to comply to that. But there is some interpretation that you can do on the guidelines that you put. So I see different ways there that sometimes people go on the technology perspective, they do a lot to protect the data, and the others and detect just one measure and then they think they comply to it. So it's not very clear what they do. So there's,
It's difficult. Nassima, anything you want to add?
No, nothing special. I think there is a question of risk management. I will summarize it this way because we see that it's not easy to have a clear answer. And
there's lots of because lots of aspects of the US Cloud Act haven't really been tested yet. So we don't know exactly how that will play out in time. Alex, from you?
I think risk management is the right thing. As a citizen, I want my health services and my public services to innovate. But on the other hand side, there's limitations from a legislation perspective. And I think we have to find our way through that jungle based on data sets and their sensitivity.
Cool. Yeah. Okay, we're at time. So just for me to thank you, guys and girls, massively for giving up your time to join us here today in Brussels. It's been a really interesting discussion. I hope you agree. Lots of insights from me as well, and for you, hopefully. So thank you very much, guys.
Okay.